There is a number in the Boone and Crockett record books that should not be possible. The club has been logging trophy black bears since the 1930s. In that entire span, 9 decades of hunters submitting skulls for official measurement across the whole of North America, there are roughly 1,790 entries that made the minimum. 619 of them came in the last 10 years. A third of every record book black bear in the history of the record book has been killed inside a single decade. Not a third of the bears, a third of the records. Something is happening to the size of the black bears in the eastern United States, and it is happening fast enough to distort a 90-year data set. Start with what a black bear is supposed to weigh, because almost everything about this depends on that baseline. Across most of their North American range, an adult female black bear averages around 150 pounds, an adult male averages about 250. That is the animal in the textbook. That is what a biologist in Idaho or Ontario expects to see walk past a camera. Now go to the coastal plain of North Carolina. There, adult females routinely exceed 300 pounds. The state record sow is over 500, which is more than double what a male is supposed to weigh anywhere else. And the males are on a different scale entirely. 500 pounds is common, 600 is not remarkable. In a single hunting season, that coastal region produced 48 bears over 500 pounds, while the mountains of the same state produced 6. Same species, same state, 8 times the number of giants on one side of it. And then there is the animal that sets the ceiling. In 1998, in Craven County, North Carolina, a hunter killed a black bear that weighed 880 pounds. It remains the largest black bear ever taken by a hunter anywhere on Earth. To put that in proportion, that animal weighed roughly 3.5 times what a male black bear is supposed to weigh, and about as much as a grizzly. It was not a one-off. In 2014, another North Carolina bear came in at 784 pounds. In Hyde County more recently, a 782-pounder became the second largest in state records. In Pennsylvania, 3 bears over 700 pounds were killed in a single year, one of them at 740. A Virginia bear at 724. A Minnesota bear at 721. In New Jersey, a hunter checked in a bear at a state station in October of 2024 at 770 pounds field dressed, which means the live animal was heavier still. And in Ontario, in 2021, a bear that came in at 803 pounds after field dressing. Wildlife professionals, quoted at the time, noted the live weight would have been well over that. The hunter needed help from other people just to load it. These are not the same population reaching its natural maximum. These are records falling in places that did not have a stable bear population 20 years ago, let alone a hunting season. So what is actually happening? Work it the way a wildlife agency would, and start by ruling things out. It is not a different species. There is exactly one bear species in the entire eastern United States, and this is it. No grizzly, no brown bear, nothing to hybridize with. Whatever these animals are, they are black bears. It is not a measurement artifact. Boone and Crockett scores skulls, not scales. Length plus width, measured to 1/16 of an inch by official measurers. The scoring method has not changed. The bears have. It is not simply that there are more bears, though there are. North Carolina alone now holds an estimated 20,000, spread across roughly 60% of the state's land area. More bears means more chances at an outlier. But population growth alone does not explain why the average animal in one region outweighs the average animal elsewhere by 50 to 100 pounds. That is not sampling. That is a different animal, which leaves the things that actually change how big a bear gets. And there are 3 of them, stacking. The first is agriculture, and it is the biggest single factor. A black bear in most of its range eats berries, nuts, grasses, insect larvae, and carrion. It is arguably the least carnivorous of the omnivores, and its year is governed by mast, the acorn crop mostly. A good mast year makes a heavy bear. A bad one makes a thin one. Now put a bear on the coastal plain of North Carolina, where corn, soybeans, wheat, and peanuts are grown in fields that run to the horizon in every direction. That bear is not foraging. It is grazing an all-you-can-eat buffet with effectively unlimited supply, planted annually for months at a stretch. A wildlife biologist with the state commission put it plainly: When farmers plant corn and peanuts, things bears like to eat, it provides a much bigger food source, and the bears tend to get bigger. A biologist in Maine described the same gap from the other end. A 3-year-old bear in Maine weighs about 200 pounds. A 3-year-old bear in Pennsylvania, same age, weighs considerably more. Maine bears just don't have access to the same foods bears further south do. Acorns in particular, and Maine's oaks are mostly in the south of the state. Same animal, same age, different food, different bear. The second factor is winter, and this one is the part that should make you sit up. A black bear's size is limited by hibernation. Every year the animal has to put on enough fat to survive months without eating, and then it burns that fat down to nothing. The longer and harder the winter, the more of the year the bear spends losing rather than gaining. Warmer winters shorten that window. Bears in the coastal southeast stay active longer. In some conditions, they barely den at all. And a bear that keeps feeding through a mild January is a bear that starts the next growing season heavier than it should be. Do that for enough consecutive years in an animal that keeps growing throughout its life, and you get sizes that no baseline predicted. The third factor is time, and it is the one that gets missed. In 1971, North Carolina created 28 bear sanctuaries covering nearly 800,000 acres, areas closed to hunting entirely. The state's bear biologist has described the logic. Let the populations grow inside the sanctuaries, and the surplus animals walk out and repopulate everything around them. That worked, but it did something else at the same time. It produced a population containing genuinely old male bears. Black bears do not stop growing. A well-fed male keeps adding weight for most of his life, and the truly enormous ones are almost always old animals. In a heavily hunted population, males rarely survive long enough to find out how big they could get. In a protected one, they do. And then they disperse into surrounding country as fully grown giants. Pennsylvania's Game Commission attributes its own run of 600-pound-plus bears to exactly this combination: extensive hardwood forest, productive mast crops, and a population that includes older age-class males capable of reaching extreme size. And this is not happening somewhere remote. That is the part worth sitting with. The bear that set the world record came out of Craven County, North Carolina, coastal farmland, 20 minutes from a Walmart. The New Jersey bear was checked in at a state station near Kinnelon, which is inside commuting distance of New York City. Pennsylvania's giants come out of counties full of towns, roads, and second homes. These animals are not living in wilderness. They are living in the seams of agricultural country, the swamp edges, the woodlots, the drainage bottoms between fields. And the reason they are so large is precisely that they are next to us. The crop is the food source. The mild winter is the same mild winter people notice in their own backyards. The sanctuary that let the old males survive was drawn on a map by a state agency in 1971. Every factor making these bears enormous is a human factor. We built the conditions, then let them run for 50 years, and the animal did what an animal that never stops growing does with a surplus. Which raises the obvious question: if you live in one of these counties, what exactly are you sharing the tree line with? The honest answer is that most people in bear country will never see one of the giants. The record animals are old, wary, nocturnal, and rare. Hunters routinely describe the truly big bears as being far more cautious than the 200-pounders that turn up in driveways and dumpsters. The bear you see on a doorbell camera is almost never the biggest bear in that forest. That is a strange sort of reassurance. The animals people meet are the small ones. The large ones are the ones nobody meets. Here is where I have to be straight with you, because that is the whole point of this channel. The headline version of this story is that nobody knows why the bears are getting bigger. That is not quite true. Biologists have a good working answer, and I have just given it to you. Food, warmer winters, and old males in protected populations, stacking on top of one another across a few decades. What nobody can tell you is where it stops. There is no known ceiling on a black bear. The species has no upper limit written into it the way many animals do. It is bounded by food supply, by the length of winter, and by how long the animal is allowed to live. All three of those constraints have loosened in the same direction, at the same time, across the eastern half of a continent. Nobody has an estimate for what the maximum is now, because the maximum is a moving number, and it has been moving in one direction for 30 years. The 880-pound bear from Craven County has stood as the record since 1998. That was the outlier of its era. Since then, the 700-pound bear has become something that happens most years, in more states, further north. And here is the part that is genuinely unresolved. Nobody has modeled what happens to bear behavior at these weights in landscapes this close to people. An 800-pound predator is not a scaled-up version of a 200-pound one. Its calorie requirement is different. Its range is different. What it is willing to approach and what it is capable of moving through is different. Most of the research on black bear conflict was built on the animal in the textbook, the 250-pound male. That animal is still the average. It is just no longer the animal people in some of these counties are actually meeting. So it comes back to the record book. 619 entries out of 1,790 in 10 years. A third of every trophy black bear ever officially recorded in North America, killed inside a single decade, in a species that was reduced to remnant pockets in the middle of the last century, and was, in living memory, considered something you had to travel to see. The bears did not change. What we put in front of them changed, and how long we let them live changed, and how long their winters last changed. And an animal that never stops growing has spent 30 years quietly finding out what it is capable of. Somewhere in the hardwood bottoms of the Carolina coastal plain tonight, in country stitched together out of cornfields and swamp and sanctuary, there are animals walking around at weights that no field guide printed in the 20th century contains. Nobody knows how much bigger they get. Nobody has found the top of it yet.